Hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Archetype Collins here. I'm here with a token buy unlock list. So since Marvel Snap changed the way you acquire Series 3 cards, now you can't just buy a ton of Series 3 that you want. You can only get one for free from the token shop per season. So you do have to be more careful with your purchases now. So I thought it made sense to update the unlock list and just kind of give you a sense of what cards should you prioritize, what cards should you avoid, what cards are decent to build around. So let's get started. So initially, we do have a list. Maybe I want the camera a little bit different though. But the list kind of just showcases the particular best buys. So we have a couple of tiers, I guess. So the first tier is the core tier. These, I think, are the best things to be looking out for. So they're not necessarily the best cards, but they're the cards you will play the most with. They are also like really strongly. I'm not telling you these are bad cards, but these are the cards with the most usability, and these are cards where you can immediately put in almost all of your decks or make a deck around. If you get these first, let's say this is your first Series 3 card, you're not going to be doomed. You're going to say, okay, I can still do something with these cards. It's not the worst start. So I have Mystique. Mystique, just a really powerful synergy card. Even if you have nothing else, you can play with Dino. But then the more cards you get, the better it becomes. It's just one of the core cards. I think the best card to pick up. These are kind of tiered, by the way, where the ones in the front, I would say, are more usable. But if they're in the same tier, they're all relatively the same. I wouldn't like say, oh, I can't get the wave or something like that. Like, they're all in the same tier. They're all equally good in my opinion. They're just like, I have like preferences for sure. Then we have She-Hulk. She-Hulk's a very strong 6-drop. You can synergize with Moon Girl to do some very powerful plays, and it still is pretty played in the meta. It did get nerfed a little bit, but the 1 power difference didn't really do too much in how you use it. Next up, we have Doctor Doom. I'm a huge fan of this card. I just think it gives you a lot of control. It lets you contest every lane really, really strong. Next up, we have Lockjaw, Electro, Sarah, Wave. These all give you ramp in some way. They all let you get more cards out than you deserve or stronger cards out than you deserve. And I do have, Lockjaw, I guess, would be a little bit better, but they're all very strong. They all do a ton of mana cheating, which I think is just one of the best strategies in card games usually, just because cards are designed around being played at this certain time, this certain mana. When you can go around those requirements, you can really do some really powerful things. So all those 4 you can pick up, and you can build decks with those cards in it. So those are the top 7. They're in a league of their own. Those are the ones I think if you can grab, if you're a new player, you're looking for something to unlock, those are the ones you can always be happy with. Now, the next one, these are Archetype Builders. So these are cards that if you get, you can really build an archetype around. They don't they aren't necessarily all equal power level, but they are cards that if you get early, you can say, okay, I can make a Daredevil deck, right? I can play Daredevil, play Professor X. If you have Spider-Man, play Spider-Man, that kind of thing. I can build around this. Death you can build around. The combo with Death is if you have Death and Wave, then you have a full deck that you can really utilize. But Death itself, you can just build this Destroy package around Death and it still works out. Dracula just kind of works with a lot of decks, honestly. But you play Dracula, you get to play a little bit heavier curve because you can steal that heavier curve stats at the end of the game. So definitely an archetype builder in my opinion. Then Patriots, Cerebro. Those ones really work well with Mystique as well. So if you have Mystique, those two also open up and give you more possibilities. But Patriot, you can use your no ability cards. Cerebro, you can use the cards that have very similar power levels. There are definitely archetypes that you can build around those two cards. Destroyer really works well with Spectrum, where you have two different late game options. And it also works well with Nimrod. If you did get the season pass, you can do that. Magic opens up these turn 6 plays. It works really well with She-Hulk as if you have that. But it opens up synergy with Mr. Negative, or it's also a pretty good tech option depending on what your opponent likes to do. Sometimes Magic will jump into the meta. Hela opens up big discard, where you're discarding a ton of your cards and then you'll get it back later on. Wong's not a archetype per se, but you can just put Wong into a lot of decks and just have that threat. And even if you get a Wong early, it's not that bad, because there are so many ways you can blow out people before they really understand how your Wong works. I would say the longer, or the more you get into Series 3, the better people are prepared against a Wong. So it loses some value. But if you want to play Wong, it's one of those cards, as you're in Pool 2 and starting to see more Pool 3 cards. This is one of the cards people are like, oh my god, I wish I had this. So yeah, you can grab it and it can make sense. But this is in the far end of the Archetype Builders, because it does have its weaknesses. And then I also have Mr. Negative. I also think this card has its weaknesses. It's just not a consistent card in how it's usually played. There are ways to make it better, but you usually need something like Zabu, Psylocke, which if you don't have, this does get worse. So it is an archetype, but it's an archetype that requires a lot of expensive pieces. So I can't really, recommend this one too much, but it is there. I want to put it in there. All right, next up we have the strong pieces. So these cards are just generically strong cards. They don't really make an archetype, and they aren't omega flexible to be part of the core, but they are just very strong cards that do a lot of work if you get them or you want to play them. So we have Agent Coulson. This gives you a lot of flexibility in your curve, because it gives you a 3 and a 4 and a 5 that fixes a lot of stuff, and you can get some really powerful 4s and 5s to really surprise your opponents. Generally a good card. Works well with Dino as well. Works well with Quinjet as well. Magneto, really good, powerful tech card that can just win games when played well. So it always seems to come roaring back into the meta. Anytime the meta uses a lot of 3s and 4s, you can just lock them out with a Magneto. Polaris is just a really strong 3-drop. It has the power cost of a card with a downside, but its effect is an upside. So just a really, really good card here. Quinjet, it did get nerfed a little bit, but it's still a really strong card. You can still play this in Dino or anything that really utilizes a lot of cheap copies of cards. So definitely still a good card. It's just not broken with Thanos anymore. Red Skull got buffed recently, actually. So this card is just better. This one still has its old 15 power stat line, but now it's 13 power, but the downside's not as bad. So definitely a strong card. Definitely think if you want to play it, you can. You just have to be aware that a lot of people are running Shang-Chi. And even if you do have this, your people just Shang-Chi you, so you have to play with protection, with armor or Cosmo or something like that. Wasp, I think, is just a very good utility card. It's a free 1 power a lot of the time, and that free 1 power can really mean a lot with other synergies. So this card tends to have a lot of value. Even though it looks innocent, it can really swing the game for you. Juggernaut, I think, is a really nice tech option. Lets you move things out of the way, lets you win lanes that otherwise you couldn't win. It can steal games for you, so I definitely think it's a strong card. Maximus, 3 mana or 3 energy, 7 power is just really good. So this one just punches up, and if you play turn 6, there's no downside or little downside. a lot of the time. So it just has a lot of power, and a lot of people tend to use it for their 3 place. Thor's a nice card. There's a lot of locations where if you can play down a Thor, this thing can be incredible. If you can copy the battle cry or play 2 of them or more or anything like that, this card just becomes absolutely nuts. So yeah, definitely has the potential to swing games when you games by itself. Really strong card. Brood is just a flexible card. You can play it in Patriot, you can play it in Cerebro, you can play it in Silver Surfer, and there's always other decks that you can also just put a Brood in. So it's a card that always just seems to have decks that can be run with it. So I think it's a pretty strong card and definitely fits the niche. Now, from this point on, all the other cards I would say are mostly not as relevant. The rest of these cards you really should not be focusing on, but they do exist, and obviously some players are going to have most of the core and most of the archetypes and all that stuff, and they want to look for the other cards they should get. But I do want to stress that these maybe 20-30 cards are what you want to be focusing your unlocks on, because you only get one a season, which is longer than a month. So you're not getting a lot of opportunities to get a card. So you don't want to be wasting your unlocks on these subpar or not as flexible cards. So that's why I'm really stressing that this top bracket, or these are the ones you really want to focus on. So if you want to purchase anything down here, definitely ask someone, go to a chat or something. I do get spammed because I say this in the YouTube. Everyone just says, oh, let me just type my response here. And I try for like the first day, but after like 3-4 days, I'm like, yeah. So, definitely you can go that direction. And usually someone in chat or someone in the YouTube will try to help if, I haven't got to it. But, it's a lot easier to just go to a stream and ask. They also are very knowledgeable. But let's move on. So next up we have tech cards. So these cards aren't necessarily that needed, but sometimes you'll get a meta where these cards can be pretty useful. So I did want to mention there might be metas where they are playable, but for now, you don't really need to be picking up these as your sole unlock for a season. So yeah, we have Arrow. Arrow's at the top. So this one is still a pretty new change. I'm not 100% sure where it's going to end up in. I do think it's still playable, actually. I still think it has its place. It's just not as ubiquitous where everyone's playing it. Now I think you need to have an idea or a game plan or where you want to be playing the Arrow. So that makes it a little bit different, but it's still, I think, a pretty good card. Captain Marvel, sometimes being able to move at the end of the game is a really powerful tool to play around some deck ideas. So the Captain Marvel can allow you to do that kind of thing and get these wins. It's also still just a solid card. I could see this in strong pieces, but I just think it's not as common of a card to see. So I'm not going to put that there, but I could see you playing it if you want to. Absorbing Man, it used to be really broken with Zabu -2, but now -1. It's a lot harder to find the decks where it just works with, but there are some decks where it does do a lot of work. So I didn't want to put it in as a tech option if you have a deck that can really abuse the Absorbing Man. Goose, right, just denies 4-5-6 cost cards. If the meta is pretty 4-5-6 cost heavy, well, you can goose it away. Shuri is pretty popular, and Goose can mess with Shuri, so that kind of thing can happen. Debris is pretty good. It works well into Galactus, and it's just a really good card for clocking your opponent's board, so definitely a strong one. Goblin, same thing with Debris, just not as many blockers, and it's also not as common as the Debris. Rogue messes with ongoing. Ghost Rider isn't necessarily, I would say, a tech card. This one is maybe the weirdest one of the. I guess Zola is also kind of weird, but Ghost Rider, there might be metas where people are doing something like black build meta, or maybe what's that one card called? That 3-drop that discards on the cards from both hands. Moon Knight meta. You can definitely see Ghost Rider as an answer, so I'm gonna put it in there for now. And then Zola also, in some circumstances, they think you're gonna Shang-Chi, or they're gonna Shang-Chi Zola to move it to the other lanes. You can surprise some people, so definitely can be a good option. And then the last group, which you might not be able to see super well, is just the last piece needed. So I just wanted a group where if you're missing that one card for a deck you really want to make, but it's not in these top, definitely ask someone before you get these cards. But I want to say, oh yeah, these are probably acceptable cards to pick up if you know you're going to use them immediately. Because I didn't want to put all of these in the bottom and just say, oh, only get them through the collection track. I wanted to say, if you're missing this one card and you really need it, and you know you're going to play it immediately, and you know you're going to put it in your deck, yeah, okay, you can get these cards. But they're not premium, they're not Omega flexible, and if you pick them up blindly, you're going to regret them. So as long as you know what you're doing, these are fine. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you want the card, you're going to know why you want them, right? So I just want to throw it out there. And then the last group, this large group, is just like cards I don't think you really want to be spending your unlock on. They're just not that flexible, and they're not that necessary. And I especially think most players who are watching this, really taking advantage of this, are going to be fairly new, and they're not going to really know exactly how to take advantage of some of these cards. So I don't want to leave them astray and put them in the top, and then they pick it up because it's somewhere, and then they're like, oh, this is a card I played for a day, but then I realized I didn't really like it, I didn't really want to play it, and now I'm down my premium unlock for that month. So all these cards, I think there's a lot of uses for them, but I think you're going to be better off working on a different card and then just unlocking these cards through the collection track. So that's the idea here. I just want you to focus on these flexible, powerful meta or build defining cards first. Aim for the top 7 or the next bracket down if you want to build a new archetype. Honestly, if you want to build a new archetype, you go for the middle. If you want cards you're always going to want to use in some facility, you're going to use the top 7. And if you want something to just like supplement your current deck, but you don't really know what it is, you could probably pick up one of these strong pieces. So just, look and see which ones fit your deck more and then pick those up. So hopefully that kind of helps the new players kind of have an idea of what cards they want to focus on. I'm going to have this image file in the description box if you want to just look at that, save that, use that instead of watching the video every time. But yeah, hope this helps. I've been trying to get my computer to work. We just got the pieces today, so I've been making myself tired, but wanted to get this video out for you guys. Hope you guys enjoy it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, I don't have the video. Right. So I did. How you do when you hit infinity and won't go back. Educated, call and snap. So like I said, I did change the computer out, some of the pieces. Don't have the folder with the pictures anymore. But yeah, oh well. Take care, everyone. Oh, man. See ya.